I am Jason White, Community Engagement Coordinator here at the Civic, the Barnsley Civic, and I'm also the project lead of Teenage Wildlife, a Historic England funded oral history project exploring 70 years of youth culture and teenage experiences in Barnsley and the Eldon Street area. This part of our project is called Teenage Wildlife Mixtape, and I approached We Great Ladies to manage this part of the project. They, with their group of young people, have written 5 original monologues, all inspired by the real teenage experiences shared to us in our oral history interviews. We have David, who's a teenager in the 1950s, Maureen from the 1960s, Kath from the 70s, Tony from the 80s, and Taryn from the 1990s. This evening, after 3-4 months of rehearsing and development, they are sharing their performances with an audience.
I'm Maya. I play Kath from the 70s, who's about to get married, and she wants to be a teacher as well.
I'm Izzy, and I play the granddad in the 80s. He owned a Red Lion in Worsborough.
I'm Taryn, and I play Maureen in the 1950s, who is going on a date. And I play Mrs. Cluis from the 1970s, who made a cake for the wedding. And I play the mum of Taryn in the 1990s, who is basically just telling her to follow her dreams of what she wants to do.
My name is Sam, and I play 2 parts. My favourite part is Taryn's granddad in the 90s.
I'm Mads, and I play Kath's mum in the 70s. She's a bit disappointed that her daughter's flying the nest.
I'm Alana, and I'm playing Taryn from the 90s, who is an aspiring dancer or dance teacher.
I'm John, and I play David from the 1950s, and he's basically getting ready for a blind date what his sister's set him up on.
I'm Millie, and I play Maureen, who's from the 1960s. She worked at Leslie Francis's, and she was a Saturday girl doing hairdressing.
I'm Adam, I'm playing Tony from the 1980s. This character's always loved music and the change of the world and how the world can be so much different as it was then.
One of the ideas behind Teenage Wildlife was sharing multiple generations' histories and experiences, specifically teenage experiences, celebrating the differences, but also sharing those that are the common experiences. The teenagers that we're working with this evening, a lot of them, it's the first time they've experienced what it was like to be a teenager in the 50s or 60s. And for many of them, it's the first time exploring the history of Eldon Street as well. So that's been a really important part of this project, not just for the young people here, but many of the different people that we've interviewed over the last 18 months.
We just sort of were given the script when Gemma first writ it, and that were the first connection with the character I had reading the script. And there were a bunch of bits in his script where he's going on about his childhood and how we're raised, which I sort of related to. I went through school being bullied, and that fact that I didn't have a father growing up as well. I just sort of related to those things.
It's a bit weird because I've actually never been on a date before. So it was a bit kind of awkward, and it got me out of my comfort zone because in acting you might have to do stuff that you're not used to.
I did kind of relate to her excitement of, everything that goes on before the show and the nerves and everything.
I learned that there were a lot of expectations and different expectations based on who the person was in your life and what they had when they were younger. So Kath's dad wanted her to go to college, but all her teachers wanted her to become a housewife, to have kids and to get married at an early age. But her dad wanted her to do a bit more than that. And I think it's quite interesting how everybody's got such a different opinion on how she should continue on.
We're interested into the backstory of Barnsley because we don't really know a lot about this town, so it's good to know other people's stories.
It were interesting trying to see what products they used back in the 50s. So I've got to use Brillo cream in my hair, which after a while it's like you've been dunked in duck fat or something. And also the old flavours of Old Spice as well, that smell awful, and I don't get how anybody thought they smelled good with that. So yeah, that were interesting to find out.
And it was also interesting because obviously my grandparents and parents have told me a lot about their past stories in Barnsley and how they met each other. So it was really nice being able to take a character from the past and try and kind of put a bit of me in there as well.
Well, I play Taryn's granddad, and when he comes on stage, he keeps on like skipping and skipping, but I do that sometimes when I'm got off to the shop, I skip there.
I like play different parts, so it's great to see that the different clothing styles in each era, and also what they did, because they didn't have like TikTok and Instagram to scroll on for hours. It's cool to see what they did in that era, in their teenage years, that's different to us now.
I'm not really into that sort of music, but it is really nice to hear how the difference is from music from the modern to the past. It's really nice to hear the difference.
The show means a lot to me because it's the first time I'm actually acting properly with a full script, and knowing that I'm actually going to go through with it and being able to connect to a character for the first time and figure out what her motives are and why she does what she does and how she connects to the people around her. It's just a really fascinating thing to do for the first time with such great people to be working with as well.
I knew mostly about the fashion, and I did really like the different pops of colour in the fashion, and except for that I didn't really know anything except for like Vespers and again the style, but I'm really happy I've been able to learn about it because it's quite an interesting few years because there's so much that goes on, and playing Maureen is really an honour because I really get to learn a lot more stuff about like the area of that years.
So it's been really inspirational and really phenomenal to not see not even that many years ago how different the world has been to compare to now, because I'm an early 2000s kid and I thought the 80s was ages ago, everything was black and white and stuff, but now that I've looked into it more, it's very similar to how the world is now, and it's phenomenal to see that difference and change from little years. It's very different from playing panto. I've only ever done a couple of performances and they've always been panto. So to play a real person, it's really, honestly, really, truly extraordinary. I've never been able to feel like so relaxed yet intense in a single moment.
I can see that some of the people that have engaged in this project, the young people, have been really inspired in local stories, whether it's the history of the buildings on this street that they might have been familiar with, or engaging with a cultural venue like this, or cultural leaders like Becky, Gemma and myself. And it's inspired them to go on to pursue other cultural projects, whether it's performing arts or visual arts or even history. People have been very generous in sharing their oral histories. Sometimes the people sharing their stories have considered theirs quite mundane. You know, they did a specific job here and went to a school there. And other people shared much more personal histories, bullying, divorce, teenage pregnancies. For those people to give us their stories and share them with the young people and develop them in this way is not only a very lovely thing for them to do and allow us to do, but for the teenagers, it's a very new thing for them, even the ones that have done performing arts before. It's a real challenge for them, but they're also being very respectful. There's a big difference between performing in a pantomime or a school play compared to handling someone's very real story, someone who could potentially be in the audience tonight. So we're really excited to see what the young people have done with that.
Fantastic, brilliant. That's what I'm saying. I cried, I did, I sobbed. It feels quite surreal because it was that long ago, I couldn't remember what I'd said, and I was like, what are they going to include, which bits are going to really stand out, because when we were talking, when we come away, I was just like, we've just talked for nearly 2 hours. Can't remember anything that was said, and then as soon as I sat down on bed, I knew it was going to be that story about my dad. And we've lost my mum since, and when she said, wrap me up in big towel, I was just like, I was there, I was back there. Alana did it so well, it was unbelievable. I just loved it. It's just the use of music to be able to portray from the 50s through to the 90s, and sort of thinking back to my family as well, so I can hear my granddad saying the things that they said in 50s, and I can hear my dad saying things that they said in 60s and 70s, and put my family in their shoes. And just that, it just gave it that real community feel and that sort of essence of Barnsley, and way that people interact with each other in Barnsley. And when you tell your story, it's all interlaced with like Barnsley at its core. You know, there's something really special about being from Barnsley.